that in fact allows people to take their post office box offshore, avoid taxes. I call that unpatriotic. That's
Governor.
what I'm talking about.
Governor.
Well, the nice thing about running with John McCain is I can assure you he doesn't tell one thing to one group and then turns around and tells something else to another group, including his plans that will make this bailout plan, this rescue plan, even better. I want to go back to the energy plan, though, because this is an important one that Barack Obama, he voted for in 2005. Senator Biden, you would remember that in that energy plan that Obama voted for, that's what gave those oil companies those big tax breaks. Your running mate voted for that. You know what I had to do in the state of Alaska? I had to take on those oil companies and tell them, no, any of the greed there that has been kind of instrumental, I guess, in their mode of operation, that wasn't going to happen in my state, and that's why Tillerson at Exxon and Mulva at ConocoPhillips, bless their hearts, they're doing what they need to do as corporate CEOs, but they're not my biggest fans, because what I had to do up there in Alaska was to break up a monopoly up there and say, the people are going to come first, and we're going to make sure that we have value given to the people of Alaska with those resources, and those huge tax breaks aren't coming to the big multinational corporations anymore, not when it adversely affects the people who live in a state, and in this case, in a country, who should be benefiting at the same time. So it was Barack Obama who voted for that energy plan that gave those tax breaks to the oil companies that I then had to turn around as a governor of an energy-producing state and kind of undo in my own area of expertise, and that's energy.
So, Governor, as Vice President, there is nothing that you have promised as a candidate that you wouldn't take off the table because of this financial crisis we're in?
There is not, and how long have I been at this? Like 5 weeks? So there hasn't been a whole lot that I've promised except to do what is right for the American people, put government back on the side of the American people, stop the greed and corruption on Wall Street, and the rescue plan has got to include that massive oversight that Americans are expecting and deserving. And I don't believe that John McCain has made any promise that he would not be able to keep either.
Senator.
Again, let's talk about the tax breaks. Barack Obama voted for an energy bill because for the first time it had real support for alternative energy. When there were separate votes on eliminating the tax breaks for the oil companies, Barack Obama voted to eliminate them. John did not. And let me just ask a rhetorical question. If John really wanted to eliminate them, why is he adding to his budget an additional $4 billion in tax cut for ExxonMobils of the world that in fact already have made $600 billion since 2001? And look, I agree with the governor. She imposed a windfall profits tax up there in Alaska. That's what Barack Obama and I want to do. We want to be able to do for all of you Americans, give you back $1,000 like she's been able to give back money to her folks back there. But John McCain will not support a windfall profits tax. They've made $600 billion since 2001, and John McCain wants to give them all by itself, separate, no additional bill, all by itself another $4 billion tax cut. If that is not proof of what I say, I'm not sure what can be. So I hope the governor is able to convince John McCain to support our windfall profits tax, which she supported in Alaska, and I give her credit for it.
Next question, Governor Palin, still on the economy. Last year, Congress passed a bill that would make it more difficult for debt-strapped mortgage holders to declare bankruptcy, to get out from under that debt. This is something that John McCain supported. Would you have?
Yes, I would have. But here again, there have been so many changes in the conditions of our economy in just even these past weeks, as there has been more and more revelation made aware now to Americans about the corruption and the greed on Wall Street. We need to look back even 2 years ago, and we need to be appreciative of John McCain's call for reform with Fannie Mae, with Freddie Mac, with the mortgage lenders too, who were starting to really kind of rear that head of abuse, and the colleagues in the Senate weren't going to go there with them. So we have John McCain to thank for at least warning people, and we also have John McCain to thank for bringing in a bipartisan effort people to the table so that we can start putting politics aside, even putting a campaign aside, and just do what's right to fix this economic problem that we are in. It is a crisis. It's a toxic mess, really, on Main Street that's affecting Wall Street. And now we have to be ever vigilant and also making sure that credit markets don't seize up. That's where the Main Streeters like me, that's where we would really feel the effects.
Senator Biden, you voted for this bankruptcy bill. Senator Obama voted against it. Some people have said that mortgage holders really paid the price.
Well, mortgage holders didn't pay the price. Only 10% of the people who have been affected by this whole switch from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13. It gets complicated, but the point of this, Barack Obama saw the glass as half empty. I saw it as half full. We disagreed on that, and 85 senators voted one way and 15 voted the other way. But here's the deal. Barack Obama pointed out 2 years ago that there was a subprime mortgage crisis and wrote to the Secretary of Treasury. And he said, you better get on the stick here. You better look at it. John McCain said as early as last December, quote, I'm paraphrasing, I'm surprised about this subprime mortgage crisis, number one. Number two, with regard to bankruptcy now, Gwen, what we should be doing now, and Barack Obama and I support it, we should be allowing bankruptcy courts to be able to readjust not just the interest rate you're paying on your mortgage to be able to stay in your home, but be able to adjust the principal that you owe. The principal that you owe. That would keep people in their homes, actually help banks by keeping it from going under. But John McCain, as I understand it, I'm not sure of this, but I believe John McCain and the governor don't support that. There are ways to help people now, and the ways that we are offering are not being supported by the Bush administration, nor do I believe by John McCain and Governor Palin.
Governor Palin, is that so?
That is not so, but because that's just a quick answer, I want to talk about, again, my record on energy versus your ticket's energy ticket also. I think that this is important to come back to with that energy policy plan, again, that was voted for in 2005. When we talk about energy, we have to consider the need to do all that we can to allow this nation to become energy independent. It's a nonsensical position that we are in when we have domestic supplies of energy all over this great land, and East Coast politicians who don't allow energy-producing states like Alaska to produce these, to tap into them, and instead we're relying on foreign countries to produce for us. We're circulating about $700 billion a year into foreign countries, some who do not like America. They certainly don't have our best interests at heart. Instead of those dollars circulating here, creating tens of thousands of jobs and allowing domestic supplies of energy to be tapped into and to start flowing into these very, very hungry markets. Energy independence is the key to this nation's future, to our economic future, and to our national security. So when we talk about energy plans, it's not just about who got a tax break and who didn't, and we're not giving oil company tax breaks, but it's about a heck of a lot more than that. Energy independence is the key to America's future.
Governor, I'm happy to talk to you in this next section about energy issues. Let's talk about climate change. What is true and what is false about what we have heard, read, discussed, debated about the causes of climate change?
Yeah, well, as the nation's only Arctic state and being the governor of that state, Alaska feels and sees impacts of climate change more so than any other state, and we know that it's real. I'm not one to attribute every activity of man to the changes in the climate. There is something to be said also for man's activities, but also for the cyclical temperature changes on our planet. But there are real changes going on in our climate, and I don't want to argue about the causes. What I want to argue about is how are we going to get there to positively affect the impacts. We have got to clean up this planet. We have got to encourage other nations also to come along with us with the impacts of climate change, what we can do about that. As governor, I was the first governor to form a climate change sub-cabinet to start dealing with the impacts. We've got to reduce emissions. John McCain is right there with an all-of-the-above approach to deal with climate change impacts. We've got to become energy independent for that reason also, as we rely more and more on other countries that don't care as much about the climate as we do. We're allowing them to produce and to emit and even pollute more than America would ever stand for. So even in dealing with climate change, it's all the more reason that we have an all-of-the-above approach, tapping into alternative sources of energy and conserving fuel, conserving our petroleum products and our hydrocarbons so that we can clean up this planet and deal with climate change.
Senator, what is true and what is false about the causes?
Well, I think it is man-made. I think it's clearly man-made. And look, this probably explains the biggest fundamental difference between John McCain and Barack Obama and Sarah Palin and Joe Biden, Governor Palin and Joe Biden. If you don't understand